Good morning, everyone. It's September 4th, Thursday, aka in my household, the first day of school. Sean, Dan, and I are here to take you through the day. Whether you're listening here on two-way on the platform where you can raise your hand and be in the conversation, perhaps you're watching on YouTube Live where you're not to put smack in the chat and to recall the importance of peace, love, and understanding, or perhaps it's slightly later in the day where you're listening to us as a podcast. If you haven't already signed up to listen to us as a podcast, please do that. Sean, what happened in your household this morning?
Well, first of all, I think we should be referring to it as a top-rated podcast, one of the nation's top-rated
Yes.
podcasts. So
Yeah,
just
okay.
we got to appropriately
Yeah,
brand it.
yeah. Well,
How-
on that point, one of the things about two-way that we talk about, and you all know implicitly, is we're trying to build authentic community around your interest in Sean and Dan and the topic we discuss every day. And you say, well, it's great to be part of the two-way community. You spend the day with Dan, Professor Kenny, Joshua Johnson, so many of our regulars. But it turns out, unbeknownst to many of you, there's another member of your community who you may not know is a member of the two-way morning meeting community. I give you a guy from California who also likes two-way. This is number 103, please.
Sacramento.
That's right.
How are hat sales going?
By the way, the most extraordinary sales we've ever seen, just as our most beautiful maps that are out there. But I will say the biggest selling item is that picture of Tucker Carlson and the late, great Hulk Hogan, and of course, Kid Rock himself blessing me, which is limited edition, Sean. If you want to pick up one, I'd do it now. By the way, before I put my crypto coin out, which I also think will be a hot seller.
Well, I didn't want to get ahead of this, but you do know that we're going to tariff all of that.
So in that interview that Sean did with the governor, Sean, what did he tell you about two-way in the morning meeting?
He watches it all the time. I dare say every day, but he made it very clear that he enjoys our conversation, the community, the back and forth, the analysis. So, just know that God forbid we were to ever lose the White House on the Republican side, at least we know we have a watcher of the show and a guaranteed guest.
That's right.
Guaranteed guest. We'll get him on the morning meeting soon. Dan, what happened in your household this morning?
Oh, all the kids went back to school today. It's a beautiful, glorious day. Sun is out.
I will say this.
Great day.
We do need an executive order. Kids should not go back to school until after Labor Day, preferably the Wednesday after Labor Day. For those of us in Virginia and South, people back to school for like 3 months. The kids go back to school in like May. This is ridiculous. There should be an executive order. No kid should ever go to school before Labor Day. I'm going to urge the president to sign that.
All right, for all of you and for Governor Newsom, in a moment, I'll run through the day book. Dan, Sean, and I will kick things around, and then we will take your questions. Again, if you're here on the two-way platform, want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. But first, my daily reminder that if you want cool, comfortable clothing at an affordable price, I recommend Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth clothes are fantastic. They're cool and comfortable. They're made from viscose from bamboo. And the bedding, same thing. You can get a big discount on all this stuff because you are, like Governor Newsom, a member of the two-way morning meeting community. Go right now to cozyearth.com. Use the code morning40. Why morning 40, you might ask? Well, morning 40 because 40% off their best-selling sheets, pajamas, more. And Dan, what's my favorite Cozy Earth product?
The pants.
The pants.
Well, you sold me last week. I admit, I went back in, Mark. It was a great sell that you put on me. So I got the everyday pant, love them. And then you made a pitch for the joggers. And I was like, God, I do love a good jogger. I went back in and get free shipping, I got another pair of pants and the jogger.
You want the free shipping, but again, use the code morning40, cozyearth.com. Built for real life, made to keep up with yours, Cozy Earth. All right. The president today, we're told right now, is on a conference call with the Europeans and Zelensky talking about Russia. He had the president of the United States had some pretty stern words about Putin yesterday. There you see the reporting from Axios. President Trump is holding a video conference call with Zelensky and European leaders. A source with knowledge says the call started around 8:20. So we'll keep monitoring that, see if it ends while we're still with you. And of course, the Europeans are meeting with Zelensky or about all of this in Paris today. So we'll monitor all that. Don't know what the vice president's doing. Big hearing on Capitol Hill today. I start while we're on the air. HHS Secretary Bobby Kennedy is before the Finance Committee. We will talk about that in just a moment. Also on the Hill, the president's nominee to one of the Fed seats, that's the one that's currently open, is having a hearing at 10 o'clock, Senate Banking. Hakeem Jeffries' press conference at 10:45. Economic data that came out just a little while ago. Let's slap that up, Paul, if we could. The numbers for today, I'm looking now. This would be 104A. You put that up. U.S. employment picture, according to Bloomberg, darkens with the new data. Again, a lot of mixed numbers, but Paul, do we have 104A? There we go. U.S. employment picture darkens with new data, according to Bloomberg 104B job openings chart. You can see U.S. job openings declined to lowest in nearly a year. So this, of course, again, more irony. The president's not going to like bad economic data, but this could also be another spur for the Fed to cut interest rates, which is, of course, what the president wants. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Mark, just on that note, the ADP, which puts out a private payroll survey, just released that showed payrolls now slowing again. It was only an increase of 54,000 in August. The market's up partly on now belief that they're going to have to cut rates because the economic picture is darkening.
Yeah, again, the president wants them to cut rates, but the economy will be a big topic for us. But today, let's start with the New York City mayor's race. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Dan, where was the first place you heard about the prospect of Mayor Adams getting out of the race?
Mark Halperin, before
right
we got
here.
on air.
Well, just let's credit the show. The morning meeting had that for you first, before a cascade of reports, first from the New York Times, then from Politico and others, saying that there's conversations from Trump advisors, doesn't say White House officials, although trust me, White House officials are involved, to see if they can get Adams a job and out of the race, and Sliwa a job and out of the race. And Adams' comments all yesterday were kind of not really defiant.
He didn't deny him.
Yeah, and sometimes his spokespeople denied him, but trust me, he's headed to get out of the race unless he changes his mind. He's a mercurial guy and not a guy with the strongest fidelity to the truth. So you don't ever know if what he's saying is accurate. Curtis Sliwa, more defiant. The Cuomo folks don't want to touch this with the 10-foot pole. Here's who is touching it, predictably, Mr. Mamdani. Here he is playing the Trump card. 111, please.
Dun, dun, dun.
Is your read on this situation that Trump is pulling for Cuomo?
Absolutely. And I think Trump is making that very clear, that this is his choice for mayor of New York City. It's Andrew Cuomo. And he's willing to use every single tool and tactic at his disposal to try and assist Andrew Cuomo in that same pursuit. And what we're seeing right now is to offer and consider positions for two candidates in this race to try and make this one-on-one. It shows just how threatened he is by what our administration would be, which is a fulfillment of the thing that he ran on but has since betrayed, which is a promise of a more affordable life for Americans.
Slap up Fox if you can. We'll bring in our political analyst, Karl Rove, who's currently live on Fox talking about this. Let's just see if Karl's saying something interesting. Probably is. Interesting guy. Fox, please.
Thereabouts. And so I'd say right now, tactical short-term victory for Mamdani, because we're not talking about what he believes and the weird positions he's taken, particularly in the past. Instead, we're talking about, is Donald Trump trying to defeat him?
Yeah, what I find curious is that, like, Eric Adams didn't just kick this to the curb. He was sort of kind of like hemming and hawing about it. This is the second time now in a month that the New York Times has reported on this. And in early August, they had Andrew Stein, who used to be a city councilman here in New York. Mark Penn was down at the White House. I think at a minimum, they're bending Trump's ear on this. I think then the question goes to, can Trump exact change on Curtis Sliwa and Eric Adams to get a one-on-one contest?
Well, hard to do, particularly if it's one thing if this had happened in June. It's another thing when it happened.
We get Karl's point. Interesting. Here's someone who agrees with Karl Rove that the emphasis on Trump's role in clearing the field for
benefit at this point, because
Cuomo, it ain't great. Richie Torres, political analyst, aka Congressperson from New York, 109, Richie Torres tweeted this: Donald Trump has gutted Medicaid and SNAP by $1 trillion to bankroll tax cuts for billionaires. His not so subtle endorsement in a New York City election is nothing short of a kiss of death. So Richie Torres is saying an extreme version of what I believe to be true, which is Cuomo may be delighted if the field is cleared, but if it comes out of this with Trump saying, I want Cuomo, which in effect is what would happen, could be a problem. So, gentlemen, we didn't arrange this in advance, and you may balk, but I'd love for you to play act a little bit. Say you're Mario Cuomo or Andrew Cuomo's brain trust. How would you be talking about this today in terms of messaging? Just have a conversation amongst yourselves. You're the communications director and the press secretary. Like, how do you do this to make it so it's not the kiss of death? Go ahead.
I think you
no, play act. Talk to each other.
I mean, John, my advice if going into the meeting here is that you focus on the real lives of real people. People endorse all the time. But at the end of the day, this is about who has a better vision for New York. And he is about socialism. And socialism it hasn't worked anywhere in the world. And it's not going to make New York City more affordable. It's not going to make New York City a better place to raise your family and do business. You don't get into the pit or the rabbit hole of who's endorsing you.
Go ahead.
I would just say, I mean, the goal today is to say I'm not seeking the only endorsement I'm seeking are the people of New York every day. I don't really I'm not involved in this. What other people do, the beauty of this is a deal being cut with Sliwa potentially. Again, just they're not. If I'm Cuomo and his people, I say I have nothing to do with this. I'm focused on talking to to your point, to the people of New York about issues that matter to them. What other people do on deals is up to them, knowing that they're going to do it anyway.
You know how sometimes the junior press intern tries to get in the conversation, right? So I'm the junior press intern. Guys, how about this? Other people can focus on jobs for politicians, failed politicians. I'm going to focus on getting jobs for real New Yorkers.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Oh, and by the way,
I said cappuccino and a stevia. Cappuccino and a stevia.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
I would
Mr.
also
Spicer.
just say that if you go there, Mamdani's walking away from the Democratic Socialist endorsement. So I mean, people have endorsements that they like, and people get endorsed by people that they probably wish they hadn't.
Right. All right. So a lot of uncertainty.
Can I just ask this real quick? We play this game real quick. What are the odds right now? We play it on the win, but let's do it. What are the odds that Adams actually takes a deal to get out?
I would say 90%, 85%,
Wow.
because he's so mercurial. But it's happening. It's happening.
You do realize one of the things that here's why I'm intrigued by this. The guy wouldn't take and cannot get in. Senate confirmed, right? He would never take because they would take. So you're basically taking a staff job. Potentially, the rumor is at HUD. Here's
the dirty little secret about this whole thing. The guy's at 7%. He's the incumbent, and he's at 7%. So play out the alternative: a staff job at HUD versus losing with less than 10% of the vote.
Fair, right.
But Sean, don't underestimate his desire to make money.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
he wants a job. His whole world is New York City, right? He wants clients in 2 years around the world and around the country. So he needs a job that puts him in touch with people outside New York City, because he's not going to make the kind of money he wants to make just deals in Brooklyn.
Okay, so can I do the same deal with Sliwa? What do you guys think the odds are that
he's the harder one?
That's right.
Yeah, but Cuomo can win with Sliwa still in the race as long as there's a Republicans for Cuomo effort. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty. Exit question. With all the uncertainty, I don't want contingent answers. What's the percent chance now that Mamdani is the next mayor of New York City? Dan was at 60 yesterday. Dan, where are you now?
55. He's still the favorite.
You went down 5% with the field being cleared potentially?
It's starting. So now it's starting, but you got to get to that line of getting them both out. So you need about 2 weeks. Early ballots come out in mid-October. You need to let all this play out, in terms of settling.
Dan says 55. Sean?
75.
Yeah, I'm still at 75.
Still, you guys are at 85. You're down.
We came down a little bit, but I'm saying we came down more than you did, Dan. Yeah, all right, tariffs. I spent a little time reporting on this over the last 24 hours, and the court now overnight, the administration filed and said, we want to hear this. We want arguments in November and a quick decision. They really couldn't get arguments in October because the court needs to come back in October and meet in person, or late September, meet in person and decide whether to take it. Everybody continues to think they'll take it. Everybody continues to think they'll decide it within weeks, which is a much faster schedule than normal. Both the administration and the plaintiffs in this case, these small businesses, all want it decided on a fast track. So, Dan, just one question on this, because not much has happened since yesterday. The briefs didn't change much. Will they decide this year, and how will they decide?
They will decide this year, and they will uphold Trump's right to do the tariffs.
Sean, do you agree?
I'm not so certain on that. Again, as I said before, I think this comes down to the interpretation of the Emergency Powers Act. Scott Bessent is filing that amicus brief claiming that tariffs, that our trade deficit is an emergency. I'm going to be surprised if they do support this. There might be some narrow carve out that the court says that because of the blah, blah, blah. But this is not, I don't think you're going to get an overwhelming affirmation of the president's right to do this. It's a congressionally, constitutionally given role for Congress. So I have a hard time, as much as the court's a strict constructionalist court. They're going to come down and say,
no, they're not. No, they're not. They're Trump beholden.
No, they're not.
Early December, 5-4, 6-3 for Trump.
Exactly.
All right.
But narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll hold their nose.
They'll hold their nose. They'll say it's extraordinary, blah, blah, blah. All right. I don't know that we want to talk much about Putin because this call is ongoing as far as we know right now. And we don't know much out of what happened in this meeting in Europe. But Sean, based on the president's remark yesterday, where he seemed pretty stern about Putin, I think it's all or nothing. I think he's either going to have a robust package that includes both sanctions and a military plan, or he's going to walk away. That's my view based on talking to people both on the Hill and in the administration. Where do you think we are now? Is it between those two kind of binary, or do you think he might try to split the difference?
I think he may split the difference and go economic first. I also think the tone and tenor of this current call is critical. If these nuts take this off the rails today, because the problem is the administration is getting frustrated with the fact that they are trying to get a deal, and the Europeans keep trying to insist that Ukraine is, and we all get it. Like, just so we're all clear on this, like we're doing analysis here. We're not saying what's right and wrong. Russia is wrong. They invaded a sovereign country. They took land. Full stop. Like, Russia is bad. Ukraine didn't do anything to deserve this. That being said, where a deal lies is any reasonable person, I think, has to accept the reality that there's going to be some land given to Russia as part of this. Again, not because I want it, not because I think that's the right thing. This kind of segues into the first part of your question. When I left Newsmax, every morning we'd had a morning call listening to, as every network does. And Mark Halperin was at Newsmax. Hold on,
stop playing that.
That's Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, we'll play that later.
But anyway, I think
Sean, don't interrupt, Sean.
Yeah, I've kind of stopped cutting me off. So anyway, I think the tone and tenor of the current call will matter. Whether or not the Europeans overplay their hand on this right now and try to tell Trump we should be giving nothing and da-da-da-da. If the state of play last night goes into this call, then I think Trump goes all in on economics. So we'll see.
All right, Dan, before you go, Andrew Cuomo press schedule just came out, or public schedule. He's talking to the media at 11:30 this morning in Midtown. Maybe I'll go. Dan, where are you on Russia? You've been pretty bearish on the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I found it kind of somewhat hilarious that they're now trying to blame Europe for this predicament. I mean, Europe's trying to keep up with Trump. I mean, he basically says, I'm going to do a summit, and now I want to talk to Zelensky. And I think he's going to face a binary choice. I think he doesn't want to do it, but I think he ends up arming Ukraine over the winter so that when we hit the spring season, which is when the battles tend to resume, Ukraine has a fighting chance to defend itself. And I think, Sean, to your point, they won't get more land, Russia, but Putin will only negotiate when he realizes no more land's coming.
Yeah. I forgot to mention at the top of the show when we were running through the schedule, the president does have one event on his schedule today. It's a private dinner on the new Rose Garden patio.
AKA Mar-a-Lago, the North.
Is a who's who of 7:30 tonight of mostly tech leaders. Did you guys?
Elon Musk.
Musk is not there. Did anyone notice any exclusion or inclusion that struck you?
I mean, Sam Altman-Fried and not Musk is a big middle finger.
Yeah, but maybe Musk was busy. We don't know that he wasn't invited. I have to say, I had to Google some of the people on the list. I did not know everybody on the list. That surprised me a little bit. I won't say who I didn't know because I'm not a big into advertisements for my ignorance. But anybody interested in the fact that they're doing this? Like, to me, this is just donor cultivation. Right?
I was just,
this is just a cement, as we said on the Beverly Hillbillies. This is just a cement financial support from the tech community for the Republicans, correct? Or am I?
Yeah,
am I
and
wrong?
I mean, look, presidents do this all the time. Bill Clinton used to do this frequently. I mean, it's just Joe Biden didn't do this stuff, so we didn't see much of it in the last few years. But it's not uncommon. Mark, you did miss it earlier before you got on. Sean did have a good thing. Will he DJ on the patio tonight?
100%.
100%. Of course he will.
By the way, one quick point on Ukraine. What will interest me more than anything is the economic, whether or not they really go after the banking systems in Europe. Europe loves to talk tough on Russia, but they take all their money, their oil on the backside. So how tough do we really get with them? Secondly, on tonight, what does surprise me, and I can't believe Adam is saying no yacht rock. That's wrong. There should be plenty of Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald tonight. That being said, although Trump, I don't think he's going to be more Phantom of the Opera and Elton John.
And the YMCA.
So
it seems to me, Sean, you live your life like a candle in the wind.
No.
Not knowing when to blow.
That's what it seems to me.
So the thing that's going to be what is interesting to me about the dinner, and Dan mentioned this, there's plenty of donor maintenance and outreach that occurs in each administration. What still kind of upsets me about this stuff is that we have plenty of people on the right to take care of that have been there with us. We have started to really focus on building an alternative economy of right-leaning folks that didn't cancel, ban, censor, debank us. And yet these guys, through a small check, frankly, turn around and we're suddenly our best friends. And I'm sorry. I think the tech folks, I get donor maintenance, and Dan's right. Both sides do this. This is part of politics. But we should not be rewarding and moving up in the line people who treated the right like horribly.
Well, it's so fascinating because I understand what you're saying. In my dealing with these folks, some of them are real converts. Some of them are not doing this cynically. Some are, but some of them are real converts and have spent time since the transition using their connections and their big brains and their assets to really help the administration. I'll be curious tonight to see which White House officials and cabinet members are in attendance. Are they seated around at individual tables? And who sits with whom? There's been a lot of criminology.
Well, the tables aren't. We'll see if they roll in new tables. So right now the tables are small. Patio but I wonder if they roll in the big.
But like, who gets to sit with Scott Bessent and Susie Wiles is basically what I'm looking for.
Oh, let's be honest. Where's JD Vance too? It is all about JD Vance for the future.
Yes.
But I think your question, Mark, is more who's not there, right?
Correct.
This is like that trip to Alaska because you got. I mean, Bessent is 100% like a lot. Are you kidding me? Howard's got a seat right now. He's there.
People are asking for the list. You can Google. A bunch of organizations publish the list. It's like 100 people.
Do you think that Trump's doing this partly because he loves to be around the richest people in the world?
Of course. And he wants to show up the patio and he wants to DJ for billionaires. Exactly. But they're doing it for donor maintenance and donor cultivation. All right, RFK on the Hill in just a little bit. In advance of this hearing, expected to be contentious, not just with pointed questions from Democratic senators on the Finance Committee, but at least some Republicans. RFKJ put out a preview video of what his tone and style at least might be today. Please roll 106.
The CDC was once the world's most trusted guardian of public health. Its mission was simple and noble: protect Americans from infectious disease. But over the years, the agency drifted. Bureaucracy, politicized science, and mission creep corroded that mission and squandered the public trust. We saw the consequences of putting dogma before science during the prolonged COVID mandates of the Biden era. Cloth masks on toddlers, 6-foot distancing with no scientific basis, boosters for healthy children, lockdowns that wrecked our economy, and the suppression of low-cost therapeutics in favor of experimental drugs that were ineffective. The CDC implemented a school lockdown policy that was written by the teachers union and sold to the public as science. This was the template for the politicization of science that became pervasive
you get the
across the
point.
agency as the agency
Sean,
put politics.
this guy knows where all the MAGA and MAHA political erogenous zones are for the movement. He knows to talk about COVID and masks, and he knows to talk about bureaucracy. Will he come out of this? Well, let me ask it this way. If you were staffing him today, what's his goal for this hearing? Does he want to end the criticism? Does he want to suck up to MAGA? Like, what should his goals be? What will his goals be for this hearing?
I think the video you just played is basically what I think the tone and tenor that he's going to exhibit at the hearing will be. It's going to be to highlight the CDC's failures, the CDC's hypocrisy, the ethical lapses. The one thing that's interesting about this debate right now, or this sort of issue, is you've got all the national news and the morning shows going off about him coming up facing skeptics or whatever. The Maha movement is squarely behind Kennedy on this, and I think grows louder when they see the criticism levied at him for exposing this. So it's interesting. You've got all of the Today shows and the Good Morning America and the New York Times coming out and saying he's going to face intense criticism today, and for that reason, Maha is growing stronger and more determined, saying this is a guy who's got our back and he's fighting for us, exposing the corruption, the ethical lapses, the hypocrisy that has occurred. So the irony of how this is going to play out is you're going to have fundamentally two different worlds viewing his testimony today. But I think exactly what he said in that video is going to be how he portrays what's going on right now, the fight for truth and for science and for reality, because you can't defend the fact that Fauci said, I kind of made up 6 feet. That's not based in science.
Dan, what's the best case Democrats can get out of this? Kennedy has become as big a lightning rod as anybody, maybe beyond the president, bigger than Hegseth, bigger than Pam Bondi for a lot of people on the left. So what's the best Democratic senators can get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the sheer hypocrisy and comedy of RFK and the movement. Like, I think that, first off, what he just said in the video, half that was under Donald Trump. So Donald Trump put the mandates in place. It was Donald Trump's administration about the masks and the shutdowns. So it's absurd. Did they get everything right in COVID? No. So the Democrats should not try to defend everything. They tried to do the best that they could during extraordinarily tough circumstances. I would advise the party to keep saying Donald Trump getting the vaccines with warp speed was a great move, right? It's Donald Trump who did that. Donald Trump got the vaccine. Donald Trump encouraged people to get the vaccine. Donald Trump created the vaccine with pharmaceutical companies. One of the great stories of success in the country during a very difficult era in the world. I think this is the Democrats' chance to own an 80-20 issue, because the vast majority of this country believes in science. They do not think the CDC is entirely corrupt and the deep state. Again, they're not perfect. Don't try to say that they are. Focus on transparency and accountability and use it as a cudgel to hit Donald Trump. And Republicans, they don't want to defend this. Polio that we helped get rid of, malaria that we helped get rid of, all the things that after World War II, our science has helped to get rid of.
By the way, the interesting thing about this, the dynamic of today's hearing, right? You noted it's the Finance Committee, not the Help Committee. Yep. And Cassidy, who is the chair of the Help Committee and a doctor, sits on the committee. So my big thing is going to be to watch how he approaches Kennedy. How does is he going full spider monkey at the guy, trying to get him, or is he?
Cassidy doesn't have spider monkey.
Right, and he's up for re-election.
And he's up for re-election. He wants Trump to stay neutral.
Well, right. And I think here's the thing, too. You have Florida. This is the great gift to Democrats. Florida is now considering removing vaccine requirements.
I think they're doing it.
Right, of any kind for children.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump is on record of saying polio and some of this stuff that he witnessed as a kid, we're not getting rid of those vaccines.
Yeah.
I would just put that to him, get him on all the Republicans. Do you support vaccines for deadly, crippling diseases that work
for public school kids?
Yeah.
And what do you say to parents with public school kids who are worried? Just to finish my Cassidy thought, despite the fact that he's up for re-election and wants the president to stay neutral, despite the fact that he doesn't have an organic spider monkey mode, I think he'll be pretty tough on Kennedy today, because it's quite black and white. Kennedy made promises to him to get confirmed, Cassidy didn't want to confirm them. He agreed to confirm them with explicit promises, and they have not been fulfilled. All right, 3 more topics we're going to do pretty quick, and then we'll get to your questions. Please raise your hand if you want to be in on the conversation, and we'd love some new folks. If you've never raised your hand before, please do today. Epstein, I think we all have been skeptical that they'll get the signatures for the discharge petition. So 3 quick questions, or 2.5. Dan, will the discharge petition work?
Maybe.
Maybe. Sean?
No.
No. Why was Maxwell moved to a minimum security prison?
I'd like to know the answer.
Sean, why was she moved?
Again, I'd like to know the answer. I assume it's because some.
No further questions on that. Dan, why are the president and the speaker working so hard to stop further disclosure?
Because they don't want names coming out.
No.
Sean, why are they working so hard to stop further disclosure?
This is one where I think that I've watched the president deal with issues like this. There's sometimes when he believes the issue is about, like, this is every single person from Bill Barr, who was the attorney general, to Ghislaine Maxwell, whether you believe her or not, in her testimony to the victims yesterday, all have said they've never heard anything about the president being involved.
I didn't say the president.
No.
I didn't say the president.
Hold on. This is what I'm trying to say.
Let me ask you a different way. They claim they're against further disclosure. Either sometimes they say because we're already disclosing, and sometimes they say because we don't want to risk hurting the victims. The victims and accusers want it. Number one. Right. Number two, they could redact. So I would stipulate that there's nothing on the public record that explains why they're fighting so hard for further disclosure.
I'm with you. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that there is a perception that they somehow believe this is against them. I'm with you.
What's the reason?
I don't know. That's why I'm saying I wish.
I think the big question now, Mark, is that last night, what's his name? Who's with Ro Khanna, the Republican? I'm just blanking on his name.
Massey, Mr. Massey.
Made a comment that there's $2.5 million being spent against him by 3 Republicans. And he said on air, one of those Republicans is in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
And there is a report that's members of Congress, using the immunity that they have for the speech and debate clause, are going to start naming names of people. That will change the dynamic.
I don't know what happened. I'll just urge everybody to remember there's a difference between unseemly and illegal. And there's a difference between minors and adults. I'll just remind everybody.
Yeah, the victims are saying that.
Yeah. Okay.
But by the way, I will say this: the funny part, Mark, about this is I've asked countless people on the MAGA side about how this ends. Every single one of them, to a T, says until there's a full accounting, it doesn't end, right? I don't think, and this is why every time that there's a resistance to this, it just continues the issue.
And I'll tell you another thing that's distinctive. And if you watch the press event yesterday, 90% of it was not about naming names of other men allegedly involved in child sex trafficking. 90% of it was accountability for how Maxwell and Epstein were treated by the legal process. And that is where I think we're headed next, because that is something that I think this administration might have an interest in covering up.
Well, but also one of the things that was reported was, why everyone's talked about why Alex Acosta has not been questioned. He was the U.S. attorney. He's going to be. But it was the deputy attorney down there who was moving the case forward reportedly against 60 individuals and was stopped. And she has publicly said how outraged she was that she was stopped.
That's going where this may head.
60.
That's where this may head.
Individuals.
That's where this may head. All right. Media story. Some of you think this entire show every day should be devoted to just talking about the media. Someday there'll be a 24-hour two-way channel solely devoted to letting you all come on and talk about the media. Here's your chance today. Bari Weiss, 107, formerly of the New York Times, one of the most significant journalistic movers of the last 5 to 10 years, who runs the Free Press, according to The Wrap. Bari Weiss set for top role at CBS News as Paramount closes in on Free Press acquisition. Story first broken by Puck. The deal is close to $200 million. An individual with knowledge tells Wrap. Bari's my neighbor on the Upper West Side, and dinner's on her if this deal Dan.
Dinners, plural.
Exactly.
Dan, Maybe you should just open an account for me at Migrant Kitchen. Dan, this deal, according to Puck, involves not just an acquisition, but Bari playing a very significant role at CBS News. Two-parter. Will this happen? And what would you think Bari's role, Bari, who's not a television person, what do you think her role would be at CBS?
It sounds like this is going to happen. I think there's been a lot of texting back and forth within our internal group chat, some of whom know CBS very well, so I won't pretend to be a CBS News expert. I think the question is she given authority to clean house? Because if she is, then all the institutional people that'll try to be a stick in the spoke of the wheel to stop her from implementing change, if she can fire them and bring in her own team, to be real.
Sean, one thing you and I didn't discuss, which I meant to, is the interview the president did with Caroline Leavitt there, where they discussed Margaret Brennan. Did you see that?
I did. I've seen clip.
Caroline said Margaret Brennan was like a stupid person, and she said to the reporter, "That's on the record." And the president said she was like a bad person, whatever he says. So, I mean, if CBS is interested in Bari's point of view about news, Margaret Brennan is one of several people who you might imagine would have trouble in a regime that was trying to clean house from people who displayed previous bias against Republicans. So same question. Do you think this is happening? And what do you think Bari's role either should be or will be?
So the question is, where does CBS want to see itself going? So is it just about TV, or is it basically trying to embrace this idea of having more online, more streaming, which I assume that's where they're trying to go. Everybody's trying to follow where the ball's bouncing, not where it is today. Bari's obviously been very successful in developing the free press. To be honest with you, I'm actually disappointed. Look, I'm a capitalist. I take the $200 million every day of the week. So let's just be clear. But that being said, I think what she has built has been a real testament to the future of journalism, and not being caught up in corporate legacy stuff and having the freedom to do what she's been able to do and expose, especially someone who saw the light coming from the New York Times. But I, as a capitalist, I appreciate her saying $200 million is not a bad deal. I would imagine she's more on the content side than the personnel side to Dan. It also depends on who they bring in above her. There's a lot of rumors about potentially David Rhodes' return. So I think the question is, I would see her more in a content future, like where do we go now? What products can we use to bring in people that are under 82 to CBS?
Yeah. Okay. Bari, meet me at camera 2. 2 things. Call me. For those listening to the podcast, I held my hand up to my ear like it's a phone and said, call me. And the other thing, Bari, warning you right now, you think you go to a lot of meetings running your startup. Wait till you see how many meetings you have to go to if you work for CBS News.
So lastly, Mark, does it happen, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. All right, John Sununu, we talked yesterday, the concept that he'll run. He did for Senate in New Hampshire, his old seat. He lost it to Jeanne Shaheen, and it seems well positioned, if he does run, to win with support of the White House. The New York Times matching my reporting that the White House is all in on this because they don't have as much confidence in Scott Brown winning the seat as they do for Sununu. And Governor Sununu did what all smart New Hampshire politicians do when they have something significant to say. He spoke to Superstation WMUR in Manchester. Here is John Sununu. It's 108, please.
Feel it's a really important time for the state, that we need someone to represent us in New Hampshire that has our values, that's not going to vote a party line, that's willing to take risks and get things done. I certainly agree, and I'm going to seriously consider a run. Over the next month, I'll travel across the state, I'll talk to people, I'll listen, get their perspective, make sure we can build a really strong team, and I'll make a decision by the end of next month.
You have your own service record, which is extensive, and the Sununu family has been in politics in New Hampshire for a long time, but the White House was also looking for a Trump recruit. Are you that guy?
Look, this is going to be about New Hampshire, right? New Hampshire voters, New Hampshire values, putting together a strong campaign. I would want to win support if I were to run across the entire spectrum, and obviously that includes the president. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If I decide to run, I imagine there'll be a primary on both sides, but I'm excited about reaching out across the state, talking to people, getting their perspective, and making the right decision for New Hampshire.
So I covered him in the House. I covered him in the Senate. I've been in touch with him regularly since he left office. He's a fan of two-way. I like him quite a bit. I will tell you that I could see him losing because he's the establishment. He's in New Hampshire. They don't really like establishment. I know it's a royal family, the Sununu name, etc. But my gut says he could lose this race. Sean.
He wins the primary if
yeah, he wins the primary because the president's going to support him.
Right. I think that it's not just his record in the House and the Senate. He has a very successful brother coming off as a 4-term governor. So, and obviously, like it's not.
But
just,
I think but just to be clear, what I'm saying, I think Pappas, who will be the Democratic nominee, is going to jujitsu all of this and say this guy's old, this guy's yesterday, I'm tomorrow.
Right, but again, you remember Pappas is in the House right now. It's hard to be like I'm the new guy when you're currently elected in the House. I think this is not the same proxy vote that I say that North Carolina will be, but it's not that far off. And I think that the Sununu brand is very strong and not just that, but you have when you think about data and name ID and things like that, like that matters. Pappas represents the House. I mean, one district, obviously it's New Hampshire, Boston media market's still king. But at the end of the day, I still think that the Sununu brand is critical in this race, and it's worth a couple points.
Yeah. Dan, I think he will win, but I think he's vulnerable. Thoughts?
I talked to someone yesterday with the DSCC. It will be a harder race, but they feel pretty good that they will win. I think the downside for Democrats is this is going to come at the expense of money in Iowa or, whatever that fourth state is that they want to put in play, or fifth to try to have a path. But they believe this will be enough of an anti-Trump market in 2026 that it is a blue state, not a 10%, but it's a blue state. Just as Sean said, North Carolina Dems may come up short because this is going to be Trump versus, Chuck Schumer. Same dynamic. Yeah. They think they'll hold New Hampshire.
But remember, that's the key thing. It's a pickup. Boston media market's very expensive. Yep. And so for that reason, Dan's that equation of taking money off the table and having to defend a seat that you wanted to go on the offensive makes Chuck Schumer's argument a lot harder to donors that, hey, we have a path to the majority because you just took one more seat and pushed it back.
Yeah. And Senate races make their own wind and weather. So even if this is a big Republican or big Democratic anti-Trump year, Sununu can still win. And I can tell you, he's a data guy, and he's not getting in this race without a lot of data showing a path to victory. So I do think he'll win, but I'm curious to see how they run against him.
Do both of you guys think he jumps in? Because
You don't go, look, this is not his first rodeo. You don't do that interview with WMUR. Go on a listening tour.
Listening tour, yeah. For Sununu to go on a listening tour means they're serious because they're not big listeners.
It's like Hillary Clinton going on a listening tour.
Yeah. All right. We're going to get to your questions now after a little interstitials here. So please, if you want to get in on the conversation, raise your hand. Not a lot of new hands up today. Love our returning champions, but please raise your hand if you've never asked a question before. I want to show you a little bit more of Sean's conversation with Gavin Newsom. This is Gavin Newsom is the name of the podcast, and this is Sean Spicer's appearance. And that's available now on the platform. But here's Governor Newsom expressing his unpassionate and undying love for this program.
This kind of segues into the first part of your question. When I left Newsmax, every morning we'd had a morning call, as every network does. And Mark Halperin was at Newsmax. He's been a contributor there. I think he still is. We would dominate the call. And so they'd get on, and I mean that because the news director would say, hey, Sean, what do you think the Republicans are going to do on this? What do you think? Because it would help shape the reporters and the other hosts. When we would talk about Congress, I'd spent a number of years in Capitol Hill, obviously the White House, the RNC. And so and Mark would say, well, my sources are telling me that that's right, or I've got a couple that say that it's going to work this way. So when I left the White House, I said to Mark, what if we could do, like Mark Halperin, by the way, for those who don't know, invented the note. And so all these morning things that you get in your email every morning, Mark, back when he was at ABC, had a note that he would type up to all of the executives. And they ended up taking that public, and it literally was called The Note, and it was the first morning tip sheet. And so I said to Mark, what if we actually could do what we do every morning, or we've been doing it at Newsmax, publicly, and we let people in? And so it started off as a thing called debate prep.
All right. Anyway, Gavin Newsom, we didn't show it there, but Gavin Newsom talked about how much he likes Dan and Sean in the show. So glad to have him aboard. All right, one more thing, a word from our sponsor, CB Distillery. Late night in my household, a little anxiety over first day of third grade. And if you've got a night like that where you're having trouble relaxing, try CB Distillery. All their products made CBD, high quality. If you've got pain after exercise, needing to relax, mood and focus issues, give it a try. Clean ingredients, no fillers, just premium CBD. Imagine using this, waking up, feeling refreshed. Give it a try. Over 2 million people have. They trust CB Distillery and their products. If you're looking for better sleep, more relaxation, again, give it a try. And now you can try it with a 25% discount. Go to cbdistillery.com. The promo code MARK, again, cbdistillery.com. Specific product availability depends on your individual state, so you have to check that out. But again, if you're looking for more relaxation, more sleep, give it a try. All right, let's go to your questions now. As always, we'll bring you in. Please let us know what is on your mind after you tell us where you are. And let's start with Dan Kelly. Dan, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind. Got to unmute, Dan. There you go.
Hey, good morning, Mark and Sean and Dan. I have been watching this since the very beginning. I got one of your newsletters, subscribed to your newsletters from the very beginning. This is the first time I'm on here. So thank you so much for everything you do. It's a tremendous gift every morning to be able to watch you guys and listen to your insights. So I appreciate it. I'm from Massachusetts, and my question is, why are you not sanguine about the efforts in California to get the referendum passed on the redistricting? And can you talk a little bit more about the efforts in the red states in order to change the maps before 2026? I think this may be one of the most significant developments for the next cycle and may essentially guarantee Republican control next year. What are your views?
Dan.
I don't know if it'll guarantee, but it's going to increase their odds of holding the House. To go in reverse order, I think Republicans will end up picking up, 3 or 4 or 5 seats in Texas. I think they'll pick up 1 or 2 in Florida. I think they'll pick up 1 in Ohio, 1 in Missouri, and 1 in Indiana. So that gets you to about 10 additional seats. So your margin becomes kind of 13, 14 now. The reason I'm sanguine about California being able to pass the ballot initiative is the history of trying to convince people to affirmatively vote yes for an initiative in California to change something that up until this moment was very popular, which was to try to use these independent commissions to get rid of gerrymandering. They went to what's called a jungle primary, meaning it's not a Democrat and a Republican nominee, but whoever the 2 top vote getters are, could be 2 Democrats, could be 2 Republicans, those people square off. And the theory was that you would try to, it would be like a moderate Dem versus a progressive Dem, let's say, and the moderates might have more of a chance of winning. It's just, I think there's skepticism. I mean, polls show it's kind of a 50-50 issue. Usually no in those instances wins. They're good for another few points. So we'll see. Gavin's all in, and he may pull this off. And if he does, he will deserve credit within the Democratic Party.
Sean.
So first, Dan, as a political, these are the kind of issues I'm glad you raised it. I love this stuff, and I know that everyone doesn't want to go down in the weeds, and there's so many facets that you can go down. The first in Texas is there's a little bit of misnomer as to how this all started. The Department of Justice, based out of Galveston, or a look at how Galveston had redistricted, basically said you must redistrict. Texas was under orders from the Department of Justice to redistrict. So did they maximize it? Absolutely. So just to be clear, but this didn't just come out of thin air. The Department of Justice said there was a violation of the Voting Rights Act and that they needed to make things right. So they were forced to do this. In California, one of the things that's fascinating is if they are right, if Gavin Newsom wins this, it's actually, I had Jessica Milan Patterson on my show last night. This is a big deal because not only would they give themselves probably 5 seats, but they shore up a bunch of the swing blue states that they have. So The outcome of California is huge because it would immediately negate the gains in Texas, but it would also shore up swing seats. This is all, Dan referenced this with respect to New Hampshire initially, right? Think about the money that gets saved in California because you suddenly free up all of the states, all the districts that have to defend, plus the ones that they'd be on the ascent on. So this is huge. But if they fail, and it's going to be a low propensity, low turnout, Prop 50 is the only thing on the ballot in California. So, they're going to spend upwards of $100 million on both sides on this. That's a crazy amount of money. But Californians have a history of turning out for propositions. 89% of the time so far in the last, I think, 10 years, it's actually Republicans have been on the right side of ballot initiatives. So fingers crossed on this. But net, if California goes down on this and Missouri and potentially Indiana, Florida in particular go forward with this, we could walk out with a net of 10 seats. I think between 7 is probably more realistic, but you could go as high as 13 depending on how much everyone does this. That plus the current 3-seat majority, I think we're playing on inches. And the one last thing I'll tell you is that President Trump's team understands more than anything else the difference between a Republican House and a Democratic House. Yep. They are going all in on everything to make sure that they maintain the House because it's not just about the agenda. It's about the impeachments, the indictments, the hearings, the oversight. They get this. And James Blair, who leads that effort in the White House, they are laser focused on this.
Dan, thank you. Grateful to you. Thanks for being part of Two-Way. Mel, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Hi, I'm in Colorado. I'm originally from California. I was raised there, lived there a long time. Both my parents are police officers in California. So if Democrats are serious about crime, which in my opinion, they're not, okay, they have never once in the past 10 years publicly shown support for the police. Like the easiest and the cheapest thing to do would be to publicly say, you know what, we respect the police, we honor them, and we should treat them with respect. That will motivate the police. That will get people to actually join because people will not join the police if they feel like nobody has their back. And over 10 years, I've seen them not one support the police. So if they're serious, the cheapest and easiest thing they could do is publicly say, you know what, we back the police. We have their back. We're not going to throw them under the bus any chance we get. Because both my parents are police officers in a major city that you probably heard about in the news lately. And everything's just the media, the Democrat politicians will throw them under the bus any chance they get. So if they were serious, they could change their rhetoric, but they're not.
Sean.
Look, I think I agree with you. I mean, the idea that they've come out so hard against policing. Look, policing's not perfect, but the men and women who go out there every day, I served on active duty with a lot of guys who were intelligence officers that in their civilian capacities are cops. Every single one of them to a T right now says recruiting is a disaster. People are scared to become cops. They don't want to become cops anymore. I met with a bunch of New York City cops during Fleet Week, and they tell the same thing. Most of their kids who were falling in line with becoming cops as well, because it was a generational thing, they've urged them not to go into the profession anymore. And that's sad because cops don't make a ton of money for the most part. They do it because they have a calling. And I mean, in these days, when you pull up to the simplest traffic stop, your life is at risk. And so I think we should honor the service of these guys. Not everyone's perfect, but no profession is. And I think how Democrats have made them a boogeyman in a lot of cases is sort of reprehensible. Most of these guys are good public servants that really put their lives on the line and who, at the risk of their own families having a mother or father come home. So I think politically, I think Republicans have always and continue should highlight their service. So I appreciate your family service, and I think it's a great point.
Dan.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sean. And I've said it, repeatedly over the years that the police are good people. They do a good job. I think, Mel, and I talked about this a little bit last week. We were off air in other forums. One of the things that's not being talked about enough about the Democrats' bind on crime is the party has not wanted to really publicly reconcile with their police reform starting around the 2015s or so, right? That culminated after George Floyd with change to bail laws, change to, the focus of police and district attorneys to not enforce kind of what they called small crime. It failed, right? Good intentions maybe, but it did not work. It contributed to a resurgence of small crime that became medium-sized crime, that became, right? People pushed envelopes to see what they could get away from. Police became disgusted. The public became disgusted. And what you've seen quietly in the last few years, and it's been huge in city council races, mayoral races, is a quiet walk back of this. Like even in New York and Washington, D.C., they've brought back stop and frisk. They have. The Black community did not object to it in New York City when it started to come back in. Mayor Adams did it. He deserves credit for it. But for the public, for the party to move forward, we have to say, how did crime get so bad the last 10 years again? What did we do wrong? And to your point, treating the police as part of the problem was a huge idiotic mistake. And the party has got to reconcile with it.
Mel, thank you. Grateful to you. All right, we got lots of programs to tell you about, so let's do that. First of all, Sean, what do you have tonight?
And thanks to your parents, Mel.
It's Thursday, so it's a panel day. We're going to break down a lot of crime, obviously, tariffs, everything that's going on. Plus, we'll talk about where Taylor Swift should have her wedding. That's going to be huge. My head cook, Michelle Bacchus, Tony,
In Rhode Island.
Yeah, Mark wants to stay with you
look,
that week.
I didn't want to bring this up, but you can't pass the Taylor Swift tax in Rhode Island. Yeah. She's going to suffer $136 million additional and then reward the same state by having your wedding there. Sorry.
Dan, yeah, go ahead.
No, so Tony Katz, Michelle Bacchus, and Mahek Cook are going to join the panel tonight. We'll break it all down.
Okay. Dan, any reflections on the just announced death of Giorgio Armani?
Oh, really? And huge. Yeah, I mean, his contribution to men's fashion and style will be remembered forever. That's crazy.
I say this, not kidding, except for my Cozy Earth clothes. The most comfortable clothes I own are the Armani clothes I'm fortunate enough to own, and lived in my building. So
I mean, just quickly, he helped bring what is considered soft tailoring to the world with the Armani line of taking out shoulder pads. I mean, he had shoulder pads, but softening things and kind of casual elegance. I'm into fashion. I
gotta say, I don't think I've ever owned a piece of. I'd have to look, but I don't know that.
I don't know Pat Riley.
I will say, unambiguous, he's one of the biggest geniuses of fashion in fashion history. But I think he's one of the 100 biggest artistic geniuses of the last 100 years.
Yeah, he and Ralph Lauren. Yep.
Yeah, just geniuses. All right, Dan, tell us about the group chat.
Yep, we will be on the group chat today at 4:00, as we always are. And we will have a super interesting moderator today, Michael Moynihan. Will be in the chair, so very excited for that. And obviously, we will have a lot to talk about. Look at that handsome man right there. But join Nina and Emma Jo and Robbie and myself at 4:00 today, or you could stream us at your convenience.
Yeah, double dose of Michael Moynihan, because you can watch him with Dan and his colleagues on the group chat at 4. And then at 7:00, Michael will be on his own program, the Moynihan Report, with Pedar Anker, historian and author of For the Love of Bombs, The Trail of Nuclear Suffering. That's at 7:00 live. Again, 2 live shows, 4 and 7. And then another live show sandwiched between them, my program, 2-way tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Mark Bednar, the Republican strategist, Democrat Steve Olikari, and Politico's Rachel Bade. All will join me to talk about news of the day, and I bet we'll do more previewing of the dinner at the White House, but we'll also talk about the Bobby Kennedy hearing and everything else going on today. So please join us at 6. And then my program next up will drop later today. My reported monologue on the rumors of the death of Donald Trump being like what happened with Paul McCartney in the 1960s. Paul is not dead, and neither is Donald Trump. Rachel Bade will join me then too. Double dose of Rachel Bade, just like double dose of Michael Moynihan. And the senator from Missouri. You like to say Missouri or Missouri?
Missouri, yeah.
Missouri. Mr. Schmidt will join me to talk about his new book about the courts and his time as Attorney General of Missouri. So all of that. And this program will be back in 23 hours for another rip-roaring episode. We look forward to catching up with you. It's Friday, which means our winners and losers of the week, as well as what to look for over the weekend. So please join us for that. Thank you for being part of the two-way community along with Governor Newsom, and we will see you tomorrow.
See if any of those CEOs dance. They may be a winner or a loser.